Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you to our LIU LearnOn webinar series this afternoon here at 1 o'clock. It's on communicating with students and parents virtually. So I am Nicole Bond, if you haven't been to a webinar with us before. And you'll see my contact information here in yellow. This is our team that has been working on all of these webinars as well as our LearnOn website. I am an educational technology specialist in the Educational Technology Services Division, but all of these divisions have worked together on these resources. I do want to point out that Ben Smith's contact is in here as well. He collaborated with me in designing this particular webinar to make sure that we had all the resources we needed and all the information we needed to give to you. I am going to put your slides in the chat so that you can access them, so you can follow along with some of the links that I'm going to share today. If you have been with us on our several different webinars throughout the last week and 2 days, you will notice that the first couple of slides here in the slide deck probably look familiar. I am going to move quickly through them, but they are important information that we like to reiterate with each presentation so that we can keep those ideas in mind as we move forward. So first of all, the Zoom meeting norms. Our Zoom webinar meeting, you may have noticed, is set up a little bit differently than a lot of other Zoom rooms. This is a particular webinar meeting room, which means that automatically your microphone and camera and chat are disabled. This is due to what can become a very large webinar at times. So if you do have questions, I'm going to encourage you to put them in the Q&A box. So you'll notice there's a Q&A panel. It looks like this up here. You'll see it right down here. And as you have questions, if you post them in there, I can keep my eye on that while I'm presenting, pause, answer questions when I can, and we can have a dialogue. You can use that to post your questions. Just keep in mind that everyone can see the questions and the answers. If at the end of this webinar you would like to speak, if you raise your hand, which you'll see is the hand down here, I can enable you to unmute your microphone and share. Also, I want to remind you that you shouldn't leave before the end of the webinar. When I end this meeting, you guys will get pushed out to the Act 48 credit link, but I will also stick it into the chat, hopefully here at the end, along with the evaluation link. You'll need your PPID for that. So I just want to go over a couple of things as we deal with the changing expectations for online learning. Many of you are facing the continuity of education right now. Either your district has chosen to move on with planned instruction or to move on with enrichment and review, or both. And so you will want to keep that in mind as we move forward. Additionally, we would like to remind you that FAPE, the Free and Appropriate Public Education, applies to all online instruction. And while we often consider FAPE as it applies to those students with disabilities and ensuring that they have equal access to the same opportunities as others, it also applies to those students who may not have access to technology or to the internet itself. So please keep that in mind as we kind of go through these resources. Think about how all of these different resources can be used differently to help communicate with families at home. So our outcomes today. Hopefully you can understand how to communicate safely with students and with parents by the end of this webinar today. One of the things I would like to reiterate to you is that this particular webinar is short. We try to keep them between 20 and 30 minutes, though I too tend to run over sometimes, because we want to show you a lot of different tools. One of the things that is most important when it comes to this particular webinar is that you go back to your district and find out exactly what your district's protocols are for communication. I'm going to give you a lot of options, but you really need to follow your district protocol. So as we wrap this up, if you have questions, you're welcome to reach out to me, but you also should go back to your district and reach out to your tech coach or your instructional coach or your administrators to find out exactly what their protocols are for you to communicate with parents and students to make sure that you're communicating effectively. So without further ado, I'm going to get us rocking and rolling. The first thing I want to share with you is that we do have our communication protocol for the Lincoln Intermediate Unit on the LIU LearnOn page. So what I'm going to do is actually exit us out of the full presentation mode here. And take us there. So this is the document that we've been using at the LIU for effective protocol. And what you're going to find is a lot of the resources I'm sharing, not all, but a lot, are in here for reference. So if you were wondering about a how-to, there are screenshots, step-by-step, explanations on what's secure file sharing, what's secure communication in this particular document. And that's why I wanted to share it with you. What I'm going to do is take our link, hopefully here, and throw this into the chat so that you have it. It is also linked on our LearnOn website, but because it's such a nice resource, I want to make sure that you have access to it in case you would like to look at it and refer to it in a couple of different ways. There we go. So it should be in the chat as well. So we have a lot of information in here. I want to zip us through here today and get us moving. So our communication protocol deals with a couple of things. The first resource I want to share with you is something called Calendly. Calendly will allow you to set up time slots for individuals to schedule meetings with you. So you can set up recurring time slots for like 1, 4, 4:30 on the example here. We're using it internally with our leadership meetings so that individuals can sign up for different times. It will integrate directly into Zoom so that it populates and creates a Zoom room for you for scheduling. So it's a very handy tool if it is something that you're looking to do to schedule meetings. You can obviously schedule meetings in Google Calendar as well, but I really like Calendly because what it does is it sends out meeting emails to everybody to make sure that everyone's on the same page and sends out the same link to everyone. And it does a really good job of scheduling those windows over and over and over again, and it's pretty user-friendly. There are a couple of different integrations besides Zoom, but if you're looking for a way to do scheduling, either with students or with parents, I do suggest looking into Calendly for this purpose. It is a freemium tool, so certain aspects of it are only accessible if you end up upgrading to the premium version, but you can still use it. It's pretty robust if you use the free version as well. So I wanted to point that out as a scheduling tool in general. Moving quickly on, another tool and another resource that I want to show you is for phone calls. So when it comes to calling home, which I think a lot of times is like our next course of action, we create the material, we put it online, and then there's an element of waiting. Or you create the schedule, you put it online, and there's an element of waiting, and you're not sure, are we connecting, are we not connecting? So there's always the next step of making the phone call. Or you may have students who don't have access to the internet and you need to make a phone call to touch base and find out what's going on and how to best get those materials to that student or those families. One of the concerns that obviously you might have is using your personal cell phone number or your personal home phone number, because then parents might have access to it. So there are a couple of ways to work around this safely and with FERPA compliance in mind. The first one is by using *67. So in order to do *67, and I really suggest testing it out at home. Dial a family member if they have a cell phone number and see if it works for you. I can tell you now it says no caller ID. So if you hit *67 and then dial your number, it will block it so that there's no identification. One of the things I would do, knowing if I was a parent getting a phone number that said no caller ID, I might not answer, is I would make sure I reach out to the parent in some form or another before then. So for instance, what I might do is create the Calendly and not offer any Zoom links and simply create it as a Calendly for parents to sign up to receive a phone call from me. Or maybe I would create several, one for phone calls. So they want a phone call, they're expecting it at a certain time. So when they get that, I can communicate clearly with them, hey, it's gonna say no caller ID because I'm blocking my cell phone for personal reasons, it's my personal number, but this is the time in which you're gonna get that phone call. So that when they see it, they don't think, oh, this is somebody spamming me, trying to sell me something, etc. Oh, this is a teacher calling me, or what have you. So I would keep that in mind. It's kind of a combo situation between Calendly and *67. Another option, and you'll have to see if it's enabled for you if you're a Google school, is the Hangouts in Google. Now this isn't Meet, this is Hangouts. It can be a little confusing. So what I'm gonna do is click here and show you. So I am logged in under my account, but you can use the phone call option through here. This will also mask your number and it will look like no caller ID. I can tell you because I tried to call myself earlier just to make sure, and that's something you can do if you get this and it's enabled. It may ask you to enter your phone number so that it can kind of get those two, I think, sync together to associate a phone number, but when you call, it will not show anybody the number. It will say no caller ID. So it would be under phone call, and you go up here and you would type the phone number in. For me, it's in the US, there would be no fee. Another option that you can do in Google Hangouts that I think is that you can also text. So I can put a phone number in there and still send my Hangout kind of as a text in there. So that's an option. If you know that parents do have the ability to text, you might want to consider this to reach out to a parent. I wouldn't necessarily use this to reach out to a student. That said, it's another option, and it's something that's worth looking into if you're looking for ways to communicate. Moving along in that vein, the other option, if you haven't considered it, is using Remind. What I like about Remind is that it masks everybody's phone numbers, and I don't have to worry about seeing theirs, and they don't have to worry about seeing mine, and I can send out communication to a blanket audience, or I can communicate just singularly with an individual, and it keeps a record of it while masking everything. I can also set office hours and Remind so that if a student or a parent reaches out to me using Remind, I may not get that message until after 8 o'clock. So I don't have to worry about maybe a frantic parent or a frantic student trying to reach me at 11:30 at night when I have decided I'm very much going to bed. So I would also consider Remind. I'll even open that up and give you an idea what that looks like. Very, very, very simple, but powerful tool. I used it with my 7th and 8th grade parents when I was in the classroom, and it worked very well. So essentially, once you've logged in and you've done it, you need to make sure first that you're only messaging people that are 13 and older for COPA reasons. So typically, I did not use this with my students. I used it with my parents as a form of communication. When I taught 8th graders, my 8th graders were 13 and older, so some of my 8th graders would sign up for this as well as their parents. When I created a mass class, I would then say, the communication I'm sending out to you is the same communication I'm sending out to you. So I would say, parents, students, you guys are getting the same communication. So that's something you want to make sure you double check, but I can put, period 1 in here and create, and you would enter your school. Of course, mine doesn't come in, so I'm not going to go that far. Let's go back into Remind. But once you enter that information, it's going to let you set that up. Hopefully. There we go. You'll see my class. And there are printable PDFs that I can send home to my students and parents so that they can do it. There's also in-person instructions. When I used to do back to school nights, I would post those. I can also sign up individuals if I already have their contact information for it, or I can share a link. So there are a couple of different ways that I can enroll individuals into my Remind class, and that's important, especially right now when it might be a little difficult to make sure that you get a hold of everyone. So once you enroll individuals in your class, there's a couple of different things that you can do. You can send messages, and you can send files. You can also choose your settings as you do this. I can send pictures, etc. So Remind's a really nice tool for this, and it might be something worth considering, especially if you have some short messages that you want to send out, short reminders. So that's Remind. Another option is something called email to text, which you might not be familiar with. If you are aware of the parent's cell phone number as well as what their wireless subscriber is, you can do that number at and one of these extensions to reach that parent via text message. What's really nice about this is once you send, all of the replies come back to your email. So it's like emailing, it's done completely through email. So you have that running record of email and not using your personal cell phone to send those text messages. So this is the providers and a list of how to do their email address formats if you have that information. If you don't have that information, that might be something that you want to ask via a form, for example, in order to obtain that information in order to do this particular ability to reach out and contact parents. But it is nice because it keeps everything in your school email. And every time you reply to the parent, once you've started that email thread, stays in your email. Another way that I'd like to show you with communication is using a newsletter, for instance, like S'more. If you know that email works, S'more is fabulous for email for a couple of reasons. One, it will start to gather analytics for you. It'll let you know who's opened the email, how much time they spent in the email, how many times they clicked on anything in the email. So those numbers and that analytic piece can be really, really helpful when you're trying to find out, you know, did this parent even get this email, or did they even open it? Additionally, they're using free templates. So S'more is a freemium service as well, in that there are certain limitations. If you use the free version, if you pay for it, you get a couple of extra analytics, you get more resources that you can use. But the templates that they have in here are free to use during the COVID-19 closures. And a lot of them are set up so that they're pretty helpful. The other thing about S'more is that you can actually print it out as a PDF. Now you're gonna lose your links interactivity, and if you embed video, you're gonna lose that as well. So I do wanna point that out, but it is nice because it's visually appealing and you can embed everything you want. So like, here's an update from the teacher. Now this isn't something I would send out every single day, obviously, but I might send it out once a week with, here's everything we're doing this week in this class, or every other week, however your communication protocol has been shared. So all of these ones on this particular link are free to use during the census. I am going to go back to the home page and log in so you can see kind of the interactivity of this particular piece and how this works. So I can show you some of the newsletters that I've used. Now I've used them not on an educational level in this account, but I used to use them in my classroom to communicate with parents. And what my parents in particular enjoyed was the fact that it was interactive. I could put files into it, for example. So for example, this one I'm going to show you is one that I sent out. You see, I can see how many visitors I have. I've put my own screencast in here. All of this is stuff that I've added. Resources and buttons. It has my signature and contact information. If I go to edit, I can show you all the different things that I can add into this. So this green button's my plus. I can add text, titles, pictures, a gallery of pictures. I can add a specific event, audio, video, buttons, and embed links. So I've embedded Google Docs in these before with a whole bunch of shareable links as well when I've sent them out. And to give you an idea, my analytics are over here. I'm not going to open that up because there is some probably private information, but it will give me some specifics in analytics as well as an email report of who opened this. I can also share it via link to individuals, and I can print or download a PDF. So this is also a really nice, robust tool for sharing to parents and or students. If you do end up enjoying it, they have a whole educator version where you can actually enroll students into classes. But what I'm showing you is just so that you can share out a newsletter and get it out to parents if need be. So I'm going to go back to my communications. A couple of other things I want to go over while we're talking about communication is going to be that web conferencing piece for any of the synchronous communication. So a lot of the stuff I just showed you was somewhat asynchronous, you know, sending messages, emails, how to call home safely and protect your number. In addition, you might be looking at web conferencing. Now, I'm going to suggest that most of you probably have districts that have chosen to go one way or another. Some districts have gone with Zoom and are sticking with Zoom. Some have gone with Zoom and are changing. Some are going with Google Hangouts Meet, and that's fine too. I'm going to try to overview both of them. So for Zoom, which is what we're using now, I'm going to give you some of the Zoom security features that you can use to avoid some of the unfortunate events that are going on right now. I'm going to show you where and what that looks like. Additionally, what I'm going to explain to you right here is if you look in Google Meet, this is where Google Meet is down here, and this is literally in the last hour. I believe that this particular feature has become available today, right as I was prepping this, that you can set up Google Meet to keep students from joining Meet without you, which was one of the big issues that a lot of educators were expressing they were having with Google Meets, is they would set that link, and even if the teacher wasn't there, students could go into Meet and horse around, be unsupervised. It'd be like having a classroom, teaching in the classroom, and then when you leave the classroom, all of the students can still hang out in the classroom and misbehave. So I believe Google is trying to fix that. Zoom also has made some security suggestions if you were trying to mitigate the situation with security and people Zoom bombing rooms. So a couple of things. First, this link takes you out to our Google site. So our site has some specific information dealing with Zoom. We have the specific information because we are using Zoom, and we want to make sure that you are aware of why we're using it and how we're using it. So we do have a specific information having to do with protecting your Zoom room under this link, which is going to be the same information I'm going to go over with you here in a minute on our slide deck. So I'm just going to go down the basics of Zoom, how to use Zoom is in here, best practices with Zoom, a couple of other Zoom tips in here, a caution about Zoom bombing, and down here at the bottom, this may help answer any of your questions that you are having regarding Zoom, because I have heard that there are concerns having to do with FERPA and with COPA, and I want to point that out. So down here, is it a FERPA violation for parents to see other students in a special education class or group, or any group for that matter? No. No student records are being disclosed, all right? When it comes to sharing synchronously, it's the same as a parent walking through a school building and seeing students working with a teacher, all right? You're not on a complete lockdown where no parent sees anyone. So that's something to keep in mind and consider. So there are several other questions in here, especially the legal questions in this facts section on our Zoom page. So I am going to encourage you to come back in through here and look at this. Coming back to our presentation, a few more protocols when using Zoom. First, when it comes to security, you want to make sure that you set a personal meeting ID. Not use the same Zoom room over and over and over again. That's going to help you with security, and with individuals coming in, seeing that your room is always the same length, they'll be able to come in and reuse the room. So make sure that you use a personal meeting ID for every single meeting. That is going to help you with your Zoom security. Additionally, try to set up a waiting room. This is an option that you can do. You want to set it up for all participants for the waiting room. That way you can make sure who comes and who goes in your Zoom room, and you can monitor that and be a moderator. And I think I skipped the password. Yes. Right up here is where Zoom security deals with passwords. You may also want to share a password for your meetings that you have scheduled. That, in addition, is going to help you with your Zoom security. I would encourage you that when you do share passwords to anyone, if you do use the password setting in Zoom, that you don't do it in the same email as the personal meeting ID. I would keep it in a separate form of communication to really up your security at that level. Lastly, I have a couple of other resources I wanted to share with you for communicating with parents and students. If you are looking to scan documents, there are several different scanning resources out there. We're really suggesting the use of Microsoft Lens. It's pretty secure. Additionally, you can also use Cam Scanner and Notes to scan documents. They're available as well for scanning and sending a document. So if you have something that's all written out on your desk, or you have paperwork that needs to be scanned and created into a PDF to be sent to a parent, those are options to create those PDFs. And lastly, I want to show you how you can send some larger files. So the best option for sending larger files is in Firefox Send. Firefox Send is encrypted, so it will make sure on both sides that your data and information is safe. I'm going to go in here. It's very, very simple to use, and you don't even have to log in. So Firefox Send is just send.firefox.com, and you can drag whatever you would like in here and drop it. Once you do that, whether it's a JPEG or a PDF, you have a lot of file size to work with, and I can select multiple. I can set how many downloads I would like, or how long I'd like the download to be available. That increases my security. I can also protect my download with a password. Now, just like I said before with the Zoom room and sending the password separately from the actual link, you'll want to do the same thing with Firefox Send. If you share the link, you want to share the password in a separate email or in a separate form of communication. If you have the ability to email and text or text and email, otherwise do 2 different emails to send them separately to help you with your security. You'll see that you can change the number of downloads so that you know if you're sharing, for instance, with multiple parents, you might want to set it to 2 downloads. Or other individuals, you might want to increase it depending on how many individuals you think will have to download this document. Additionally, you can change how long you want it to be open. Maybe you only want it open for an hour because you're sending it and you want this individual in there now. Maybe you want it open for a week. So those are all options. So if I do for an hour, 1 download, we'll just leave it without the password. And I upload. It gives you a link. So all you have to do is copy the link. And that was just a screenshot. So I'm going to throw that in the chat. And what you'll find is there's only 1 download. Whoever gets to it first is the person who gets that picture. And anyone else is going to tell you, nope, you can't. So what's great about Firefox Send is it's a very secure way of sending a larger file because you should not be emailing and sharing a Google Doc outside of your educational entity. So if you're not sure about your security, this is definitely the way you should be file sharing. So in sum, considering the tools that I've shared with you today, I'd like you to just take a moment and think about what your best resources are going to be. And I'm just going to remind you that definitely go back to your districts and find out what is it that your district is saying is best use, is their protocol for communication. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A and I will do what I can here to answer them. You can also reach out to me via email, nabond@iu12.org, and I will do my absolute best to get back to you as soon as I can. You can find our schedule for webinars. We have one more today on open education resources at 2 o'clock. You can find that schedule on our LearnOn website, which you will see posted here. I'm going to put the evaluation and the Act 48 forms into the chat while I'm waiting to see if anyone has any particular questions about all of these forms of communication. Okay. And since I don't see any questions, I just want to thank you very much for attending our webinar, whether it was just this one today or our series of webinars today. We really appreciate it. I want to thank you for all of the work that you are definitely doing outside of even these webinars, I'm sure, to get ready and prepare your students and work in your online classroom. Thank you so much.